20 million years ago, the ancestor of every bear on Earth was the size of a fox terrier. Today, one of its descendants weighs 2,500 pounds and hunts seals on Arctic ice. Another one sits in a bamboo forest, gripping stalks with a fake thumb that used to be a wrist bone. A third one weighs less than your average adult human and climbs trees in Borneo. 8 species, all from the same tiny animal. And the wildest part? One of them pulled off the fastest transformation of any large mammal we know of. The animal in question was Ursavus, and it lived during the Miocene epoch across what is now Europe and Asia. Fossils show a creature barely larger than a house cat, with a generalized body plan that gave no hint of what was coming. It ate insects, fruit, small vertebrates. Nothing about it screamed apex predator. Nothing about it suggested that its descendants would one day dominate 6 continents and occupy every biome from tropical rainforest to frozen sea ice. Ursavus was closer in size and lifestyle to a raccoon than to anything you would call a bear. It probably scurried through underbrush and climbed low branches to reach fruit. If you had seen one in the wild, you would not have given it a second glance. From Ursavus, the family Ursidae branched into 8 living species: brown bears, polar bears, American black bears, Asian black bears, sun bears, sloth bears, spectacled bears, and giant pandas. Each one took the same basic blueprint and rebuilt it for a completely different life. Same ancestor, 8 wildly different answers to the question of how to be a bear. Start with the polar bear, because its story is the one that bends the timeline. According to a 2014 study published in Cell by Liu and colleagues, the polar bear lineage split from brown bears somewhere between 343,000 and 479,000 years ago. In evolutionary terms, that is yesterday, brown bears and polar bears diverged so recently that they can still interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Grizzly polar hybrids have been documented in the wild in northern Canada, and their numbers appear to be increasing as Arctic ice retreats and the 2 species share more territory. But despite that short separation, polar bears look and function like a completely different animal. They are white instead of brown. They swim for days across open ocean. They hunt ringed seals on sea ice using a method that requires patience, stealth, and a body built to survive months of sub-zero cold with almost no plant food. Their diet is almost entirely fat and protein. According to that same Cell study, the polar bear genome shows some of the strongest signatures of natural selection ever documented in a large mammal. Genes involved in cardiovascular function, fat metabolism, and cholesterol transport have undergone rapid, dramatic change. A polar bear runs on a diet that would give a human heart disease in years. Its body processes saturated fat the way yours processes vegetables. The gene APOB, which in humans is linked to high cholesterol risk, has been so heavily modified in polar bears that their version of the protein handles lipid transport in a fundamentally different way. That Cell study estimated these changes occurred over roughly 20,000 generations. 20,000 generations for a large mammal to go from forest omnivore to specialized marine predator. For comparison, humans have been anatomically modern for roughly 10,000 generations. The polar bear's metabolic overhaul happened in twice that span, and it involved changes to fundamental cardiovascular biology, not just fur color. The speed of that rewrite is part of why geneticists keep returning to polar bears as a case study in rapid adaptation. The giant panda went the opposite direction. Instead of becoming a specialized carnivore, it became a specialized herbivore, but kept a carnivore's digestive system. Pandas eat bamboo almost exclusively, sometimes consuming over 12 kilograms a day. Their guts have no cecum for fermenting plant fiber the way a cow or horse does. They extract so little nutrition from bamboo that they up to 14 hours a day eating just to break even on energy. A panda's daily life is one long meal, interrupted by sleep, followed by another long meal. And then there is the thumb. A panda grips bamboo stalks between its fingers and what looks like a 6th digit on each hand. According to a 2022 study published in Nature Scientific Reports, that digit is not a true finger at all. It is an enlarged radial sesamoid, a small bone that normally sits inside the wrist. Over evolutionary time, that bone grew into a functional opposable stub that lets the panda hold bamboo the way you hold a pencil. Researchers studying fossils of Eilurarctos, an ancient panda ancestor from roughly 6 million years ago, found that the proto-thumb was already present but smaller and less developed. The ASU News coverage of this research noted that the sesamoid bone had been gradually elongating across millions of years, repurposed from a wrist stabilizer into a gripping tool. No other bear has anything like it. No other carnivore does either. The sun bear sits at the other end of the size spectrum. It lives in the tropical forests of Southeast Asia and weighs between 25 and 65 kilograms, roughly the weight of a medium-sized dog. It is the smallest bear alive. It has an extremely long tongue, sometimes exceeding 25 centimeters, which it uses to extract honey and insects from deep inside tree cavities and termite mounds. Sun bears are almost entirely arboreal, spending much of their time in the canopy. They build nests out of branches in the treetops to sleep in. Their claws are long and curved, shaped more like hooks than paws, built for gripping bark rather than swiping at prey. A polar bear on Arctic sea ice and a sun bear asleep in a tree nest in Borneo share a common ancestor, same family, completely different engineering. If you're finding this interesting, there are more stories like this on the channel every week. Then there is the spectacled bear, the only bear species in South America. According to the IUCN Bear Specialist Group, the spectacled bear is the last surviving member of the subfamily Tremarctinae, a lineage that once included the giant short-faced bear of North America, one of the largest land predators that ever lived. The short-faced bear stood nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder and may have weighed over 1,000 kilograms. It had long legs built for chasing prey across open grassland, more like a wolf's proportions than a bear's. It vanished around 11,000 years ago. Its smaller cousin survived in the Andes, eating bromeliads, palm hearts, and fruit on mountain slopes up to 4,000 meters in elevation. The spectacled bear builds tree platforms out of broken branches in the cloud forest canopy, climbing up to feed on fruit and then resting on its own construction. It is the only bear in South America, and the last echo of a lineage that once produced giants. The sloth bear in India developed a completely different feeding strategy. It evolved a gap in its upper front teeth and a flexible lower lip that together form a biological vacuum tube. The sloth bear clamps its mouth against a termite mound, closes its nostrils, and sucks. The sound can be heard from hundreds of meters away. It pulls insects out of hardened clay structures that other animals cannot access without digging. Its claws are the longest of any bear species relative to body size, curved like sickles, designed not for combat but for tearing open rock-hard termite colonies. The sloth bear is the only bear species whose primary feeding method is suction. The American black bear took a generalist approach. It eats berries, nuts, insects, fish, carrion, garbage, birdseed, and anything else it can find. It thrives in forests, swamps, mountains, and suburban backyards. Black bears have expanded their range across North America partly because they refuse to specialize. While polar bears locked into a marine fat diet and pandas locked into bamboo, the black bear kept every option open. That flexibility is why black bears now have one of the largest population numbers of any bear species, estimated in the hundreds of thousands across North America. The Asian black bear, sometimes called the moon bear for the pale crescent on its chest, carved out a middle path between arboreal and terrestrial life. It climbs well, forages on the ground, and ranges across a habitat belt from Iran to Japan. Moon bears and American black bears look remarkably similar despite being separated by an ocean and millions of years of independent evolution. Put their silhouettes side by side, and you would struggle to tell them apart. Two separate lineages arrived at nearly the same body plan independently. 8 species. One ancestor the size of a small dog, a marine fat specialist in the Arctic, a bamboo grinder with a fake thumb in China, a tree-sleeping insect hunter in Borneo, a mountain frugivore in the Andes, a generalist in every North American backyard, and 2 black bears on opposite sides of the Pacific that evolved to look almost identical without exchanging a single gene. The polar bear rewrote its cardiovascular system in fewer generations than humans have been a species. The panda repurposed a wrist bone into a functional finger. The sloth bear turned its mouth into a vacuum cleaner. The sun bear shrank to the size of a dog and moved into the treetops. Each one started with the same Miocene blueprint and rebuilt it from scratch for a world Ursavus never could have imagined. We think of bears as one kind of animal. They are 8 completely different answers to the same evolutionary question, written over 20 million years, all starting from the same small sentence. If you want more stories like this, the channel has plenty.